Grace Mitchell thought the worst part of her divorce hearing would be facing her cheating husband in court. She was wrong. The worst part was bleeding through her dress at 8 months pregnant while his mistress laughed out loud. The worst part was collapsing in front of everyone who'd whispered about her for 6 months. The worst part was wondering if her baby would survive the day. But that was just the beginning. Because when the judge slammed those DNA results on the table, everything Grace thought she knew shattered. The paternity test, the genetic secrets, the second pregnancy no one saw coming, layer after layer of lies so twisted, even the judge went pale. This is the story of a woman who discovered her husband didn't just cheat. He planned, he plotted, he researched, and the evidence the attorneys uncovered would change everything. This is a story about survival, about the lies we believe, about the strength we don't know we have until we're forced to use it, and about a courtroom revelation so shocking it would make headlines. I'm about to tell you what really happened the day Grace Mitchell's world ended, and how she built something better from the ashes. Stay with me, you won't believe where this goes. The warm wetness spreading across Grace Mitchell's thighs happened just as Brittany Cole's laugh echoed through the courtroom. Grace gripped the edge of the defense table. Her knuckles turned white against the polished wood. The laugh came again. High, sharp, cruel, like glass breaking against marble. "Your Honor," Derek's attorney said, "as I was saying, my client believes Mrs. Mitchell has demonstrated a pattern of instability that makes her unsuitable for primary custody." Grace felt the wetness seep through her water blue maternity dress. Not spotting, not the normal discharge her doctor said was fine. Actual bleeding, the kind that meant something was wrong. Her attorney, Caroline Burke, leaned close. "Grace," she whispered, "are you okay?" Grace shook her head. Barely, just enough for Caroline to see. In the gallery behind them, Brittany Cole sat in the second row. Red dress, too tight, too bright, like she wanted everyone to look at her. She leaned forward, her manicured hand covering her mouth, but her eyes gave her away. They were smiling. Judge Margaret Hartwell looked up from the papers on her bench. "Mr. Patterson, please continue." Derek's attorney straightened his tie. "Mrs. Mitchell has refused to participate in court-ordered counseling. She has made false accusations against my client. She has attempted to turn their mutual friends against him." Grace tried to focus on the words, but the cramping started, low, deep, like a fist clenching inside her belly. She pressed one hand against her stomach. Her daughter kicked. Once. Twice. Hard. Carolyn stood. "Your Honor, I need a moment with my client." "Ms. Burke, Mr. Patterson has the floor." "Your Honor, this is urgent." Judge Hartwell sighed. She removed her reading glasses. "Very well. 5-minute recess." The gavel came down. The sound cracked through the courtroom like a gunshot. Grace tried to stand. Her legs felt like water. Carolyn caught her elbow. "I'm bleeding," Grace said. Her voice came out wrong, too quiet, too small. "How much?" "I don't know. I can feel it." Carolyn's face changed. She turned to the bailiff. "We need an ambulance." The word cut through the courtroom chatter. Ambulance. Everyone stopped talking. Everyone turned to look. Grace felt their eyes on her. Dozens of them. Judging, measuring, waiting to see what would happen next. Brittany's voice carried clearly from the gallery. "Oh my God, is she actually—" The gavel slammed down again. Harder this time. "Ms. Cole," Judge Hartwell said, "one more outburst and you'll be removed from this courtroom." Brittany pressed her lips together, but Grace could see it. The smile trying to break through. The satisfaction in her eyes. Grace looked across the courtroom at Derek, her husband of 12 years, father of the baby currently fighting for life inside her body. He sat beside his attorney, his face carefully blank. Not worried, not concerned, just calculating, like he was adding up numbers in his head, like he was trying to figure out how this would affect him. His expensive suit caught the fluorescent lights. Grace had bought him that suit for their 10th anniversary, back when she still thought they were happy, back when she didn't know about the hotel rooms, the secret credit cards, the lies stacked so high they could bury her. The bailiff spoke into his radio, static crackled, words Grace couldn't quite hear. Caroline pulled Grace toward the aisle. Come on, let's get you to the bathroom. No, Grace straightened. The cramping intensified. She breathed through it. The DNA results. They're scheduled for today. I'm not leaving. Grace, you're bleeding. I know what I'm doing. Grace pressed both hands against her belly. Her daughter kicked again. Alive. Fighting. I've waited 6 months for this. 6 months of whispers. Of people looking at me like I'm a liar. Like I'm the one who destroyed everything. You need medical attention. After. The courtroom doors opened. An EMT entered. Young, maybe 25. She carried a medical bag. Behind her, another EMT pushed a gurney. Ma'am, the first EMT said. I'm Sarah. Can you tell me what's happening? I'm 8 months pregnant, Grace said. I started bleeding about 10 minutes ago. There's cramping. Sarah knelt beside Grace's chair. Any pain? Sharp? Dull? Cramping. Low. It comes and goes. Have you had any bleeding during this pregnancy before today? No. Sarah looked up at her partner. Something passed between them. Something that made Grace's stomach drop. We need to get you to the hospital, Sarah said, after the hearing. Ma'am, I can't force you to go, but if you're experiencing placental abruption, every minute matters. Placental abruption, the words Grace had read about at 3 in the morning, during one of those nights when sleep wouldn't come, when the house felt too empty, when the weight of everything pressed down until she couldn't breathe. Carolyn knelt on Grace's other side. Please, the hearing can be postponed. Grace looked at Judge Hartwell. The older woman watched from her bench. Her expression was hard to read. Professional, detached. But something in her eyes suggested she'd seen this before. Women forced to choose between their bodies and their dignity. Your Honor, Grace said. Her voice came out stronger now, clear. I'd like to proceed. Judge Hartwell leaned forward. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm not going to put your health at risk. The DNA results were supposed to be presented today. I need to hear them. They can wait. No, Grace said, they can't. The courtroom was completely silent now. Even Brittany had stopped smirking. Grace felt the wetness spreading, cooling against her skin. She knew what it looked like. She didn't have to see it. She could feel everyone else seeing it. The dark stains spreading across her dress. The evidence of her body failing her at the worst possible moment. 3 times she'd checked on her phone that morning. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock. Checking for a text from Derek, an apology, an acknowledgement that he'd destroyed their life together. But her screen had stayed blank, just like her future felt. Empty, waiting to be filled with something she couldn't yet imagine. Ms. Burke, Judge Hartwell said. Approach. Carolyn squeezed Grace's shoulder and walked to the bench. Derek's attorney joined her. They spoke in whispers. Grace watched Derek instead. He sat perfectly still, his jaw tight, his hands folded on the table in front of him. No wedding ring. He'd taken it off 3 months ago. Said it didn't feel right to wear it when they were getting divorced, but he'd worn it during the affair. For 2 years, while he slept with his assistant, while he lied about business trips and late meetings, while Grace blamed herself for their struggles to conceive, while she tracked her ovulation and ate foods that were supposed to increase fertility and cried in Target bathrooms over negative pregnancy tests. He'd worn the ring through all of that. Sarah, the EMT, took Grace's blood pressure. The cuff tightened around her arm. Released. Tightened again. 140/90, Sarah said to her partner. That's high. I know, Grace said. It's been high since I found out my husband was cheating on me. Sarah's expression softened. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Grace looked at the lawyers still clustered around the judge's bench. But sorry doesn't change anything. Sorry doesn't make the last 2 years not have happened. Sorry doesn't make my daughter's father not a liar. The words felt good coming out, like releasing pressure from a valve, like maybe if she said enough true things, the lies would lose their power. Carolyn returned. She crouched beside Grace's chair again. Judge Hartwell is willing to hear the DNA results now, before you go to the hospital, but she wants the EMTs to stay, and she's ordering an immediate recess after the results are read. Grace nodded. Okay. Grace, Caroline's voice was gentle, almost motherly. Are you sure? I'm sure. Judge Hartwell's gavel came down again. We're back on the record. Given the circumstances, I'm going to accelerate our timeline. Miss Burke, I understand you have DNA test results to present? Yes, Your Honor. We received them this morning. Proceed. Carolyn walked to her table. She picked up a manila envelope. Official, sealed, the thing Grace had been waiting for. The proof that would clear her name. That would show everyone she'd been telling the truth. But before Caroline could open it, Sarah leaned close to Grace's ear. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. The bleeding is getting worse. I can see it from here. I'm going to have to insist that you go to the hospital immediately after this. After, Delpho, Ristabara thought before Sarah exchanged another look with her partner. Okay, but we're staying right here. Grace nodded. The cramping came again, stronger this time. She breathed through it, in through her nose, out through her mouth, the way her birthing class instructor had taught her. Back when she thought Derek would be there for the birth. Back when she thought they'd do this together. Carolyn held up the envelope. Your Honor, these results confirm what we've maintained throughout these proceedings. The child Mrs. Mitchell is carrying is biologically Mr. Mitchell's. The paternity test shows a 99.9% probability of paternity. The courtroom erupted, voices overlapping. Derek's attorney stood. Your Honor, we'd like to examine those results. You'll have your chance, Judge Hartwell looked at Derek. Mr. Mitchell, you claimed in your filing that you had reason to doubt paternity based on what evidence? Derek stood, slowly, like he had all the time in the world, based on the fact that our marriage had deteriorated, based on my wife's suspicious behavior, based on nothing, Grace said. Everyone turned to look at her. Judge Hartwell's eyebrows rose. Mrs. Mitchell? Grace stood. Carolyn reached for her arm, but Grace shook her off. She faced Derek across the courtroom. Blood dripped down her legs. She felt it. Warm, wet, undeniable. You lied, Grace said. You knew the baby was yours. You filed that paternity challenge to humiliate me, to make people doubt me, to punish me for not quietly accepting your affair. Derek's face remained blank. That's not true. Which part? Grace's voice rose. The affair, the lies. The 2 years you spent sleeping with your assistant while I blamed myself for our fertility problems. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, Mrs. Mitchell is clearly emotional. Perhaps we should... I'm 8 months pregnant and bleeding in a courtroom, Grace said, while the man I spent 12 years with sits there and lies, while his mistress sits in the gallery and laughs. Yes, I'm emotional. I'm human, which is more than I can say for him. Judge Hartwell's gavel came down, once, firm. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand your frustration, but I need you to sit down. Grace sat, not because she wanted to, but because her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. The bleeding was worse now. She could feel it pooling beneath her, could see Caroline's face going pale as she realized just how bad it was. Sarah moved closer. We need to go, now. Your Honor, Caroline said, we need to transport Mrs. Mitchell immediately. Judge Hartwell nodded. Agreed. This hearing is in recess. We'll reconvene. Wait, Grace's voice cut through the courtroom. There's more, isn't there? Carolyn hesitated. Grace, what else does that envelope say? Caroline looked at Judge Hartwell. The judge nodded. Your Honor, Caroline said slowly, the paternity test also included a genetic screening, standard practice in custody cases, to identify any hereditary conditions that might affect the child. And, Judge Hartwell prompted, and the results show that Mr. Mitchell carries a genetic marker for a hereditary condition, one that requires disclosure to partners before conception, one that, if passed to the child, requires expensive lifelong treatment. The courtroom went silent. Even Brittany stopped shifting in her seat. Grace stared at Derek. You knew? He didn't answer, but she could see it in his face. The guilt, the calculation, the realization that his lies were unraveling faster than he could spin new ones. You knew, Grace said again. You knew before we tried to get pregnant, and you didn't tell me. Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Hartwell said, I think we need to pause here. But Grace wasn't listening anymore. The cramping was too strong. The blood was too much. The world was tilting sideways. She heard Caroline shouting, felt Sarah's hands steadying her, saw Derek's face swimming in and out of focus. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was Brittany Cole's expression. Not laughing anymore, not smirking, just shocked, pale, like she'd finally realized she wasn't watching a drama unfold. She was part of it, and none of them were getting out unscathed. Grace sat in her car in the driveway. The engine ticked as it cooled. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. 10 and 2, like her driver's education teacher had taught her 20 years ago. Like if she just held on tight enough, everything would stay in place. Her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, walked past with her golden retriever. She waved. Grace waved back, smiled, the muscle memory of politeness taking over even when her world was ending. She'd been sitting here for 40 minutes. She knew because she'd watched the clock on the dashboard. 3:17 when she pulled in, 3:57 now. 40 minutes of not being able to walk into her own house. On the passenger seat, Derek's iPad sat face up, still unlocked, still showing the message that had changed everything. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. Soon? The lipstick emoji at the end, bright red, like a bloodstain. Grace had found it during Sunday breakfast. Derek had left the iPad on the counter while he showered. She'd picked it up to check the weather. Instead, she checked messages. The preview had shown on the lock screen. From Brittany Cole, she'd known the name. Derek's assistant, the one he'd hired 2 years ago. The one he'd said was just okay at her job, but good enough for now than what he'd taken on 23 business trips. Grace's phone buzzed. She looked down. A text from Jenna, her best friend. Still on for lunch today? That new place on 5th? Grace typed back. Rain check? Not feeling great. It wasn't a lie. She felt like she was dying, like someone had reached inside her chest and pulled out everything vital and left only the empty space behind. 3 days ago, she'd taken a pregnancy test. Positive. After 2 years of trying, after 2 years of negative tests and doctor appointments and eating food she hated because the internet said they'd help with fertility. After 2 years of wondering what was wrong with her body. She'd planned to tell Derek that morning she'd made his favorite breakfast. Blueberry pancakes, real maple syrup, coffee the way he liked it. Black. 2 sugars. She'd even bought a little box. Put the positive test inside with a note. Looks like our family is growing. The box sat in her purse now, still wrapped, still hopeful, a relic from 30 minutes ago when she'd still believed in their life together. A car pulled up behind her. She watched in the rearview mirror as Derek's black sedan parked on the street. He got out, walked toward her car, tapped on the window. Grace rolled it down. Why are you sitting out here? He asked. She held up the iPad. You left this on the counter. His face changed, just for a second, fear flickering across his features before the mask slid back into place. Grace, don't! She turned off the car, got out, stood facing him in their driveway, in the neighborhood where they'd lived for 5 years, where they'd amazed to neighbors and hosted barbecues and pretended to have a normal, happy marriage. How long? She asked. Can we go inside? How long, Derek? He looked away, toward the house, like the answer was written on the siding. A few months. Don't lie to me. Not now. How long? His jaw tightened. About 2 years. 2 years. The words hung in the air between them. 2 years of lies. 2 years of hotel rooms and secret texts, and her blaming herself for their fertility struggles. 2 years, Grace repeated. Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else's body. We've been trying to have a baby for 2 years. You've been sleeping with your assistant for 2 years. It's not what you think. What is it then? It doesn't mean anything. It's just what? Just sex? Just fun? Just something to do when you're bored with your wife? A car drove past, Mr. Chen from 3 houses down. He raised a hand in greeting. Derek waved back, still performing, still pretending. Can we please go inside? Derek said quietly. Grace walked toward the house. Derek followed. She unlocked the door, stepped inside. The smell of breakfast still hung in the air, pancakes and coffee and the life she'd thought they were building. She turned to face him in the entryway. Tell me everything. Grace, you owe me that much. Tell me everything. He ran a hand through his hair. the gesture she used to find endearing. Now it just looked like a performance, like everything else about him. It started about 2 years ago, he said. After the company party, we were working late. One thing led to another. That's not everything. That's a summary. I want details. Why? What good will details do? Because I deserve to know what I'm grieving. I deserve to know exactly what you destroyed. He sighed, sat down on the stairs. It was supposed to be one time, but then it happened again, and it became this thing we did. While I was tracking my ovulation, while I was taking my temperature every morning, while I was crying in bathroom stalls over negative pregnancy tests. I didn't know those were connected. Grace laughed. The sound came out wrong. Too sharp, too bitter. You didn't know? You didn't know that lying to your wife and sneaking around might cause stress? You didn't know that stress might affect fertility? That's not fair. Fair? Grace felt something break inside her, something that had been holding everything together. You want to talk about fair? I blamed my body, Derek. For 2 years, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was the reason we couldn't have a baby. And the whole time you were... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't push the words past the lump in her throat. Derek stood, took a step toward her. Grace, I'm sorry. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't come near me. We can fix this. How? How do you fix 2 years of lies? Counseling, I'll end things with Brittany. We can start over. You think I want to start over with you? We've been married 12 years, which means nothing if it was built on lies. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it, kept her eyes on Derek. On this man she'd thought she knew. This stranger wearing her husband's face. Do you love her? Grace asked. No, then why? I don't know. That's not good enough. Derek's expression hardened, the apologetic mask slipping. What do you want me to say, Grace? That I was bored? That I wanted something exciting? That our marriage had become routine? At least that would be honest. Fine, yes. Our marriage felt like a checklist. Wake up, go to work, come home, talk about having kids. Fail to have kids, repeat. It was suffocating. Grace felt the words like physical blows, each one landing, each one leaving a mark. So you had an affair. I made a mistake. For 2 years, that's not a mistake. That's a choice. Every time you texted her, every time you met her, every time you came home and kissed me hello with her perfume still on your clothes. Those were choices. The doorbell rang. They both froze, stared at each other. Don't answer it, Derek said. Grace walked to the door, opened it. Jenna stood on the porch, her face concerned. Hey, Jenna said. You didn't answer my text. I got worried. I'm fine. Jenna looked past Grace, saw Derek standing in the hallway, read something in the air between them. What's going on? Nothing, Derek said. Just a disagreement. He's having an affair, Grace said. The words came out flat, matter of fact, like she was reporting the weather. Jenna's eyes went wide. What? With his assistant for 2 years. Grace, come on, Derek said. We don't need to involve other people. Why not? Grace turned to face him. Brittany was involved. For 2 years. Your coworkers must have known. Someone had to notice all those business trips. All those late nights. Someone had to see something. That's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is this is between us. There is no us anymore. Grace felt the truth of the words settling into her bones. There hasn't been an us for 2 years. There's been you and Brittany and me, alone, trying to fix something that was already broken. Jenna stepped inside, put a hand on Grace's arm. Come stay with me. I'm not leaving my house. Then he should leave. Grace looked at Derek. You heard her? Grace, be reasonable. I'm being perfectly reasonable. You had an affair? You lied. You leave. It's my house too. Then we'll figure it out legally, but right now, today you need to go. Derek stared at her. Something flickered across his face. Not remorse, not apology, anger. Like she was the one being unreasonable. Like she was the one who'd destroyed everything. Fine, he said. I'll pack a bag. He walked upstairs. Grace and Jenna stood in the hallway, listening to drawers opening, closing. Footsteps moving from room to room. Are you okay? Jenna asked quietly. No. Stupid question. Sorry. I'm pregnant. Jenna's hand tightened on Grace's arm. What? I found out 3 days ago. I was going to tell him this morning. I had a whole thing planned. Oh, Grace, I thought we'd finally done it. Finally gotten pregnant. Finally got what we'd been trying for. And instead, her voice broke. Instead, I found out none of it was real. Derek came back downstairs, carrying a duffel bag. He paused in front of Grace. We should talk about next steps. My lawyer will call you. You're getting a lawyer? What did you think would happen? You'd have an affair and we'd just move past it? I thought we'd try to work it out. You thought wrong. Derek looked at Jenna. Can you give us a minute? No, Jenna said. I think you should go. He looked back at Grace. For a moment, something passed between them. 12 years of history, of inside jokes and shared memories and mornings waking up next to each other. 12 years of building a life together. And then the moment passed. He walked out the door. Grace watched through the window as he threw his bag in the car and drove away. The house felt different without him in it. Emptier, but also cleaner. Like his presence had been contaminating the air, and now she could finally breathe. She walked to the kitchen, saw the breakfast she'd made, the pancakes cold now, the coffee congealed, the little wrapped box still sitting on the counter where she'd left it. She picked up the box, held it in her hands. Do you want me to throw that away? Jenna asked from the doorway. No. Grace set it back down. I want to remember. I want to remember what I thought we had, so I never forget what he actually is. And what's that? A liar. Grace walked to the sink, turned on the water, started washing the dishes, the pancake pan, the coffee pot, the mugs they had used that morning, before everything fell apart. Jenna stood beside her, picked up a dish towel, started drying. I need to tell you something, Grace said, about the baby. What? I'm keeping it. Whatever happens with Derek, whatever happens with the divorce, I'm keeping this baby. Okay. You don't think that's crazy? I think you get to make your own choices. That's all that matters. Grace nodded, kept washing dishes, the water running over her hands. Hot, then hotter, until it almost burned, until she felt something besides the numbness spreading through her chest. Later, she would find the hotel receipts, hidden in Derek's office desk, 2 years' worth, charges from cities he'd claimed were business trips, dates that coincided with the anniversaries she'd thought they'd celebrated together. Later, she would discover he'd taken Brittany to Cancun the week Grace had canceled their baby moon because Derek said work was too busy. Later, she would learn he'd gotten a vasectomy reversal consultation. Not to reverse one he'd had, but to get one, because he'd been planning to leave her before she got pregnant. But that was later. In that moment, standing in her kitchen with her best friend beside her and her marriage dissolving around her, all Grace knew was that everything she'd believed was a lie, and somehow she had to figure out how to build a truth from the wreckage. Grace opened her eyes to fluorescent lights, hospital ceiling, beeping monitors, the smell of antiseptic and fear. She's waking up, someone said. Carolyn's voice. Relieved. Grace tried to sit up, a hand pressed gently on her shoulder. Take it easy, a nurse said. You've been unconscious for about 20 minutes. The baby, Grace said. Her hand flew to her stomach. Is fine, the nurse replied. We've got her on the monitor. Heartbeat is strong, but you've had a placental abruption. We need to keep you here for observation. The hearing is still in recess, Carolyn said. She appeared in Grace's field of vision, hair slightly mussed, concern etched into her features. Judge Hartwell agreed to reconvene in the courthouse conference room, if you are feeling up to it. I am. Grace, you just collapsed in a courtroom. I know what happened to me. Grace pushed herself up. The room spun slightly. She breathed through it. I need to finish this, today, before Derek has time to spin new lies. The nurse checked the fetal monitor, adjusted the leads attached to Grace's belly. Your blood pressure is still elevated. The doctor wants you on bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy. After the hearing. Mrs. Mitchell, after the hearing. The nurse exchanged a look with Caroline. the universal language of women dealing with a stubborn patient. "I'll get the doctor," the nurse said. She left the room. Caroline sat in the chair beside the hospital bed. "Before we go back, there's something you need to know." "What?" "While you were unconscious, I received a call from my investigator, the one who's been looking into Derek's finances." Grace's stomach clenched. What did he find? "Derek started liquidating marital assets 8 months ago, before you got pregnant. He's moved about $300,000 into offshore accounts, and he took out a life insurance policy on you." The beeping monitor seemed to get louder. "What?" $2 million, with himself as the beneficiary. He took it out right before you got pregnant. Grace felt the words rearranging her understanding of reality. "He was planning to leave me. It looks that way. Before we even got pregnant, while we were still trying, while I was taking vitamins and tracking ovulation and blaming myself." She stopped, drew a breath. "He was planning his exit. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing." Grace swung her legs over the side of the bed. "Everyone keeps apologizing. You, Jenna, my mother. Like sorry makes any difference. Like sorry undoes the lies. What do you want me to do?" "I want you to go back into that conference room and present every piece of evidence you have. I want Judge Hartwell to see exactly who Derek is, and I want him to walk out of there with nothing." Carolyn nodded. "Okay. When you said life insurance policy, it's standard for couples with mortgages, but Derek increased it to $5 million as 6 months into your pregnancy." $5 million. Grace thought about the searches she'd done at 3 in the morning, the ones she'd never told anyone about, looking up her symptoms, trying to figure out if the anxiety and the stress and the fear were normal pregnancy things or something more, looking up pregnancy complications, miscarriage rates, maternal mortality. Had Derek been looking up the same things for different reasons? "Do you think," Grace stopped, started again. "Do you think he wanted something to happen to me?" Carolyn was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, but we're going to find out." The doctor entered, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Patterson. You gave us a scare." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You have placental abruption. Do you know what that means?" "The placenta is separating from the uterine wall." "Exactly, which means you and your baby are at serious risk. You need bed rest immediately. No stress, no courtrooms, no confrontations with your soon-to-be ex-husband." After the hearing, Dr. Patterson looked at Caroline. "Can you talk sense into her?" "I've been trying. I've spent 6 months waiting for this hearing," Grace said. 6 months of Derek telling everyone I cheated, of people looking at me like I'm a liar, of his mistress posting photos on social media with captions about how love conquers all. "I'm not walking away now." Dr. Patterson sighed. "If I clear you to go back to the courthouse, you go in a wheelchair. You stay seated. And the moment I call and say it's time to come back, you come back. Understood?" "Understood. And after this hearing is over, you're on complete bed rest until delivery, which might be sooner than planned if this abruption worsens." "Okay. I'm serious, Mrs. Mitchell. This is your health. Your baby's health. Don't gamble with it." Grace nodded, but inside she was thinking about Derek, about 2 years of lies, about the life insurance policy, about how she'd blamed herself for problems he'd created. She was thinking about rage. Pure, clean, clarifying rage. An orderly brought a wheelchair. Grace climbed into it. Carolyn pushed her out of the emergency room, through the hospital corridors, into an ambulance that would take them back to the courthouse. "Are you sure about this?" Carolyn asked as they rode through the city streets. "No," Grace said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." The courthouse conference room was smaller than the courtroom, more intimate. Judge Hartwell sat at the head of a long table, Derek and his attorney on one side, 2 empty chairs on the other side for Grace and Carolyn. Brittany Cole sat in a chair against the wall, still in her red dress, but the smirk was gone. She looked pale, uncertain. Grace wheeled herself to the table. Carolyn sat beside her. Judge Hartwell looked over her reading glasses. "Mrs. Mitchell, are you well enough to continue?" Yes, Your Honor. The doctors cleared you? For now, as long as I stay seated and remain calm. Then let's proceed. Judge Hartwell looked at Caroline. Ms. Burke, I believe you had additional evidence to present regarding the paternity test. Yes, Your Honor. Caroline opened a folder. As mentioned before the recess, the genetic screening revealed that Mr. Mitchell carries a marker for a hereditary condition, specifically a bleeding disorder that requires lifelong treatment if passed to a child. And Mr. Mitchell didn't disclose this? No, Your Honor. Mrs. Mitchell was never informed. Judge Hartwell turned to Derek. Mr. Mitchell, is this true? Derek's attorney started to speak, but Derek held up a hand. I knew about the marker, but the condition is manageable. I didn't think it was relevant. Didn't think it was relevant? Grace heard her voice rising. She forced it back down. You let me go through genetic counseling, blood tests, amniocentesis, and you never mentioned you had a genetic condition? It's not a condition, it's a marker. There's a difference, Rodrigo. A difference that could affect our daughter's entire life. Our daughter will be fine. You don't know that. Neither do you. Judge Hartwell's hand came down on the table. Not quite a gavel, but close. Let's keep this civil. Ms. Burke, what else do you have? Caroline pulled out another document. Phone records, Your Honor, between Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Cole, dating back 2 years. She slid the papers across the table. Judge Hartwell read them. Her expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. This is a lot of communication, Judge Hartwell said. Yes, Your Honor. An average of 57 calls and 300 texts per month, including during hours when Mr. Mitchell claimed to be in business meetings. Your Honor, Derek's attorney interjected, my client has already admitted to the affair. These phone records don't prove anything we haven't acknowledged. Actually, Caroline said, they prove something very interesting. Look at the dates and times of these messages. Judge Hartwell flipped through the pages. Her finger paused on one. This is the date of Mrs. Mitchell's amniocentesis. Yes, the procedure was at 9 in the morning. Mr. Mitchell called Ms. Cole at 9:15. They spoke for 42 minutes, then had dinner together that evening. Grace remembered that day, the needle going into her belly, the fear that something might go wrong. Derek's hand in hers, squeezing, reassuring her, and then he'd left. Said he had an important meeting. Couldn't be rescheduled. He'd been with Brittany. Your Honor, Caroline continued, the phone records also show extensive coordination between Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Cole regarding their testimonies for this hearing. They rehearsed their statements, synchronized their stories. That's a serious allegation, Judge Hartwell said. I have the text messages to prove it. Caroline handed over more papers. Grace watched Derek's face as Judge Hartwell read the texts, watched the color drain, watched him realize his careful lies were unraveling. Judge Hartwell set down the papers. Ms. Cole, please approach the table. Brittany stood, wobbled slightly on her heels, walked to the table and sat in the chair Caroline indicated. Ms. Cole, Judge Hartwell said, you're under oath. Do you understand that? Yes, Your Honor. Did you coordinate your testimony with Mr. Mitchell? Brittany looked at Derek. He gave the smallest shake of his head. Ms. Cole, Judge Hartwell said sharply, answer the question. Brittany's voice cracked. Yes, we talked about what to say. Why? Because Derek said Grace would try to make me look bad. He said she'd lie about when the affair started. He said we needed to have our story straight. Grace felt Caroline's hand on her arm, a silent reminder to stay calm, to let this play out. And when did the affair start? Judge Hartwell asked. About 2 years ago. You're certain? Yes, it was right after the company holiday party. Judge Hartwell looked at Grace. Mrs. Mitchell, when did you and Mr. Mitchell start trying to conceive? 2 years ago, January. The same time the affair began. Apparently, Judge Hartwell turned back to Brittany. Ms. Cole, were you aware that Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell were trying to have a baby? Brittany glanced at Derek again. This time he didn't shake his head. He just stared at the table. Yes, Brittany said quietly. And you continued the affair anyway? Derek said, he said she couldn't get pregnant. He said they had been trying for years before me. He said it was hopeless. Grace's hands clenched into fists under the table. She'd been trying for 2 years, not years plural. 2, while Derek was telling his mistress she was barren. Ms. Cole, Judge Hartwell said, I have some additional information that just came to my attention. Are you currently pregnant? The room went silent, completely silent. Brittany's face went white. How did you? Are you pregnant? Yes. How far along? 12 weeks. And who is the father? Brittany looked at Derek. Her expression crumbled. Him. The words hung in the air. Grace heard them, understood them, but couldn't quite process them. Brittany was pregnant with Derek's baby, while Grace was pregnant with Derek's baby, while Derek was trying to prove Grace's baby wasn't his baby. It was so absurd it almost wasn't real. Judge Hartwell removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Mr. Mitchell, you filed a paternity challenge against your wife. Claim the child she's carrying might not be yours, all while impregnating your mistress. Is that accurate? Derek's attorney started to speak. Derek stopped him. Yes, Derek said, that's accurate. And Ms. Cole, you knew Mr. Mitchell was married, knew he was trying to have a child with his wife, and you got involved with him anyway. He told me his marriage was over, Brittany said. Tears streaked her mascara. He said they were only staying together because of the fertility treatments. He said once they admitted it wasn't going to happen, they'd divorce. But then I got pregnant, Grace said softly, and his plan fell apart. Everyone looked at her. That's what happened, isn't it? Grace kept her eyes on Derek. You were trying to leave me. Had it all planned out, the offshore accounts, the affair, the exit strategy, and then I got pregnant, and you were trapped. Derek didn't answer. So you filed the paternity challenge, Grace continued, to give yourself an out. If you could prove the baby wasn't yours, you could leave without looking like the bad guy, without paying child support, without being responsible. That's not, what is it then? Explain it to me, because I've spent 6 months trying to understand how the man I married could do this, and I still don't have an answer. Derek stood. I want a recess. Sit down, Mr. Mitchell, Judge Hartwell said. I have the right to consult with my attorney. You have the right to remain silent, which I suggest you exercise before you make this worse. Derek sat. His jaw was clenched so tight Grace could see the muscles jumping. Judge Hartwell looked at Caroline. Is there anything else? Yes, Your Honor, the life insurance policy. What about it? Mr. Mitchell took out a $2 million life insurance policy on Mrs. Mitchell shortly before she became pregnant. He increased it to $5 million at 6 months. Judge Hartwell's eyebrows rose. That's unusual. Yes, and when combined with Mr. Mitchell's search history, Carolyn pulled out more papers, which includes searches for placental abruption, pregnancy complications, and life insurance payouts in maternal deaths. You went through my computer? Derek's voice was sharp, angry. Your work computer, Caroline corrected, which you used to conduct personal business, including communication with Ms. Cole. The company's IT department was very helpful once we explained the situation. Judge Hartwell read the search history. Her expression grew darker. Mr. Mitchell, she said slowly, why were you researching pregnancy complications? I was worried about my wife. You were worried about your wife, the wife you're divorcing, the wife whose paternity you challenged, the wife you cheated on for 2 years. Yes. Do you understand how this looks? Derek's attorney leaned close, whispered something. Derek shook his head. I didn't want anything to happen to Grace. I needed to understand the risks. Because of the $5 million life insurance policy. No, because she's the mother of my child. Which child? The one you're trying to prove isn't yours? Or the one your mistress is carrying? Derek didn't answer. Grace felt the room spinning. Not from the blood pressure or the placental abruption. From the sheer weight of the betrayal, layer upon layer, lies stacked on more lies. Your Honor, Carolyn said, I'd like to request a recess. My client needs to return to the hospital. Agreed. Judge Hartwell stood. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9. Mr. Mitchell, you're not to contact Mrs. Mitchell or Ms. Cole. You're not to leave the state. And I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation of insurance fraud. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, that's premature. Is it? We have a man who took out a large life insurance policy on his pregnant wife, who researched pregnancy complications and maternal mortality, who had motive to want his wife out of the picture. I think it warrants investigation. Grace watched Derek's face crumble, watched him realize that his lies had consequences, that his actions had finally caught up to him. She felt no satisfaction, no victory, just exhaustion, bone-deep exhaustion that made her want to close her eyes and sleep for a year. Carolyn wheeled her out of the conference room, past Brittany, who was crying into her hands, past Derek, who stared at the table like the answers were written in the wood grain. In the hallway, Grace finally spoke. He wanted me dead. We don't know that. Carolyn, $5 million. Searches about pregnancy complications. What else could it mean? It could mean a lot of things. Name one. Carolyn was quiet. He wanted me dead, Grace said again, so he could be with her, so he could get the insurance money, so he could start over without the burden of a wife and child. Grace, I need to go to the hospital. I know, the ambulance is waiting. They rode in silence. Grace watched the city pass by outside the window, people going about their lives, unaware that hers was falling apart in slow motion. At the hospital, they put her in a room, hooked her up to monitors, gave her medications to stop the contractions that had started. Jenna arrived within the hour, sat beside the bed, held Grace's hand. I heard, Jenna said. Caroline called me. And which part? All of it. Grace nodded, kept her eyes on the ceiling, on the water-stained tiles that looked like continents on a map. He wanted me dead, Grace said. Maybe. Maybe not. But you're alive, and you're going to stay alive. You and that baby. I don't know how to do this, Jenna. I don't know how to keep going when everything feels broken. One breath at a time. That's all. Just keep breathing. Grace breathed, in, out, in, out. The monitor beeped its steady rhythm, her daughter's heartbeat, strong, persistent, fighting, like her mother. I did the panic cleaning before the hearing, Grace said suddenly, at 4 a.m. I scrubbed the baseboards in the bathroom, the ones nobody would ever see. I needed to control something. Anything. I know, Jenna said softly. I know. Does it get better? This feeling like the world is ending? I don't know, but I know you're strong enough to survive it. Grace wanted to believe her. But lying in that hospital bed, monitors beeping, her body betraying her husband plotting against her, she didn't feel strong. She felt like she was drowning. And the worst part was knowing that the man who'd promised to save her had been the one holding her underwater all along. The next morning, Grace returned to the courthouse, against medical advice, against Jenna's protests, against her own better judgment. But she returned, because she needed to see it through, needed to watch Derek's lies crumble, needed to hear the truth spoken out loud in a room full of witnesses. The conference room felt smaller today, more crowded. A court reporter sat in the corner. A police officer stood by the door. This wasn't just a custody hearing anymore. It was becoming something else. Judge Hartwell entered. Everyone stood. Grace rose from her wheelchair with Caroline's help, sat in the chair at the table. We're back on the record, Judge Hartwell said. Before we continue with the custody matter, I want to address the concerns raised yesterday. Mr. Mitchell, your attorney has indicated you'd like to make a statement. Derek stood. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, suit wrinkled, hair uncombed. Your Honor, he said, I want to clarify something about the life insurance policy and the computer searches. Go ahead. I took out the policy because we were starting a family. It's standard financial planning. And the searches, I was worried about Grace. This pregnancy has been hard on her. High blood pressure, stress. I wanted to understand what could go wrong so I could be prepared. Prepared how? Judge Hartwell asked. To support her. To know when to take her to the hospital. To understand the warning signs. Yet you filed for divorce while she was pregnant, challenged the paternity of your child, and conducted a 2-year affair that caused the very stress you claim to have been worried about. Derek's jaw tightened. I made mistakes, but I never wanted to hurt her, never wanted anything bad to happen to her. Your Honor, Caroline said, may I cross-examine? In a moment, I want to hear from Ms. Cole first. Brittany Cole walked to the witness chair. She wore a different dress today. Navy blue, conservative. Her hair pulled back, makeup minimal, like she was trying to look respectable. Like she was trying to look like someone who hadn't knowingly slept with a married man for 2 years. Judge Hartwell reminded her she was still under oath. Brittany nodded. Ms. Cole, Judge Hartwell said, tell me about the nature of your relationship with Mr. Mitchell. Brittany cleared her throat. We worked together. He was my boss. We became close. When did the relationship become sexual? About 2 years ago. And you knew he was married? Yes. You knew his wife was trying to get pregnant? Yes. Did that give you any pause? Brittany looked down at her hands. At first, but Derek said, he said his marriage was already over. He said they were only staying together because of the fertility treatments. He said Grace knew it was a formality. Did you believe him? I wanted to. I cared about him. Care about him. But you had doubts? Sometimes. When he'd cancel plans because of something with Grace, when he'd take her to doctor appointments, I'd think maybe he wasn't being entirely honest. But you continued the relationship anyway. Yes. Why? Brittany's eyes filled with tears. Because I thought I loved him. Because he said he loved me. Because he promised we'd be together once the divorce went through. When did you find out you were pregnant? About 3 months ago. How did Mr. Mitchell react? Brittany wiped her eyes. He was shocked. He said we'd been careful. He asked me what I wanted to do. And what did you want to do? I wanted to keep the baby. I thought it meant we'd finally be together, that he'd leave Grace and we'd start our family. Is that what happened? No, he told me to wait, said the timing was bad, said we needed to get through the divorce first, said if Grace found out, it would complicate things. Judge Hartwell leaned forward. Did he say anything else about Grace finding out? Brittany hesitated. He said it would be better if certain things happened naturally, if the divorce went smoothly, if there weren't complications. What kind of complications? He didn't say exactly, but he talked about how pregnancy was risky, how things could go wrong, how Grace's high blood pressure was dangerous. Grace felt Caroline's hand on her arm, squeezing gently, a warning to stay calm. Ms. Cole, Judge Hartwell said carefully, did Mr. Mitchell ever suggest that something might happen to his wife during the pregnancy? Not directly, but he'd say things like how it would be easier if things resolved themselves, if nature took its course. Did you understand what he meant? I thought he meant if Grace miscarried. It would be sad, but it would mean he could move forward. With me. With our baby. The words hung in the air. Grace felt them settling over her like a shroud. Derek had been hoping she'd miscarry, hoping her baby would die, so he could start fresh with Brittany. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, my client never said any such thing. Ms. Cole is clearly misinterpreting. I'm not, Brittany said sharply. I'm not misinterpreting anything. I know what he said. I know what he meant. Ms. Cole, he wanted her gone. Brittany turned to look at Derek. Tell them what you told me about the life insurance, about how we'd be set if something happened, about how we could start over somewhere new with the money. Derek's face went pale. I never said that. You did, in your car, after we found out I was pregnant. You said if something happened to Grace, the insurance would give us a fresh start. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Derek didn't answer. He looked at his attorney, at the police officer by the door, at Judge Hartwell, everywhere but at Grace. Ms. Cole, Carolyn said, may I ask you some questions? Judge Hartwell nodded. Proceed. Carolyn stood, walked around the table, positioned herself between Brittany and Derek so they couldn't make eye contact. Ms. Cole, when you started working for Mr. Mitchell, did he tell you about his previous assistant? No. Did he tell you she was fired for having an affair with him? Brittany blinked. What? His previous assistant, Rebecca Henderson. She was terminated 3 years ago after Mr. Mitchell's wife discovered they were having an affair. I didn't know that. Before Rebecca, there was another assistant, Emily Warner, also fired after an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Mitchell. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, This is character assassination. This is establishing a pattern, Carolyn said. Mr. Mitchell has a history of becoming involved with his assistants, of promising them relationships, of using his position of power to manipulate them. That's not true, Derek said. Which part? The affairs or the manipulation? Derek's attorney put a hand on his arm. Don't answer that. Carolyn turned back to Brittany. Ms. Cole, did Mr. Mitchell ever tell you that you were special, different from the others? Yes. Did he tell you that his marriage was loveless? That his wife didn't understand him? Yes. Did he promise you that once the divorce was final, you'd be together? Yes. And did you believe him? Brittany's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Us. When did you stop believing him? Yesterday, when I found out Grace was pregnant too. When I realized he'd been lying to both of us. Carolyn pulled out more papers. Your Honor, I have here the employment records for Ms. Cole, showing she was fired from 2 previous positions for relationships with married supervisors. Brittany's face crumpled. That was different. Was it? Or do you have a pattern of becoming involved with unavailable men? This isn't fair. Fair? Ms. Cole, you slept with a married man for 2 years. You helped him lie to his wife. You coordinated testimony for a court hearing. And now you're claiming you're a victim? I am a victim. He lied to me too. You were complicit in his lies. I didn't know. You knew enough. You knew he was married. You knew his wife was trying to get pregnant. You knew and you did it anyway. Grace watched Brittany fall apart in the witness chair. Watched the tears flow. Watched the makeup run. And she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion. Because Brittany was right. She was a victim too. Derek had lied to her, used her, promised her things he had no intention of delivering, just like he'd done to Grace. Your Honor, Carolyn said, I'd like to introduce evidence of Mr. Mitchell's financial planning, specifically documents showing he researched the legal requirements for collecting life insurance after a spouse's death. She handed over more papers. Judge Hartwell read them. Her expression grew darker. These searches were conducted on Mr. Mitchell's work computer, the same computer he used to communicate with Ms. Cole. They include searches for causes of maternal mortality, time between death and insurance payout, and whether an insurance company can deny a claim if foul play is suspected. The room went silent. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, these searches could have been for any number of reasons. Name one, Judge Hartwell said. Research for a project, curiosity, concern for his wife's well-being. Concern for his wife's well-being does not explain searching for information on how long it takes to collect life insurance after a death. Your Honor, I've heard enough, Judge Hartwell set down the papers. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to give you one chance to tell me the truth. What were you planning? Derek looked at his attorney, at Brittany, at Grace. Finally, he spoke. Nothing. I wasn't planning anything. I was scared. Grace's blood pressure was so high. The doctor kept talking about risks. I thought if something happened, I needed to know what to do, how to handle it financially. By increasing the life insurance to $5 million, I wanted to make sure the baby was provided for. If something happened to Grace, Caroline said, you wanted to make sure you were provided for, you and Ms. Cole. You wanted the insurance money so you could start your new life together without the burden of your pregnant wife. That's not... Then explain it to me. Explain why you took out a policy worth $5 million. Why you researched maternal mortality. Why you told your mistress that things would be easier if your wife was gone. Derek stood. I never said that. Ms. Cole testified under oath that you did. She's lying. She's angry because I wouldn't leave Grace for her. She's making things up to get back at me. Brittany made a sound, something between a laugh and a sob. You wanted me to get an abortion. You said the baby would complicate things. You said we should wait until after the divorce. But really, you just wanted me gone too, didn't you? Brittany, you never loved me. I was just convenient. Someone to pass the time with while you figured out what to do about Grace. That's not true. Then why won't you look at me? Brittany stood from the witness chair. Walked toward Derek. Look at me. Tell me you love me. Tell me you want this baby. Derek looked at her. His expression was blank, empty. I don't know what I want. Brittany recoiled like he'd hit her. I'm pregnant with your child. I know. And you don't know what you want? I need time to think. Time to think? I've been waiting for 2 years for you to choose me. How much more time do you need? Grace listened to them, to the fight she'd heard variations of in her own marriage, and the same empty promises, the same deflections, the same man saying whatever he needed to say to keep everyone placated while he figured out his next move. She'd been sitting here making herself smaller, apologizing with her posture. Her mother had taught her that. Take up less space when there's conflict. Don't make waves. Don't cause scenes. But she was done with that. Done shrinking. Done apologizing for taking up space in her own life. Derek, Grace said. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood, slowly, carefully, placed both hands on the table for support. Grace Caroline said, you should sit. I'm fine. Grace kept her eyes on Derek. I need to say something. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. Grace took a breath. Derek, I've spent 6 months trying to understand how you could do this, how you could lie for so long, how you could look me in the eye every morning and pretend you loved me while you were destroying everything we'd built. Derek opened his mouth, closed it. I blamed myself, Grace continued, for not being enough, for not seeing the signs, for not being the wife you wanted. But I finally understand something. This was never about me. It was about you, your emptiness, your inability to be honest, your need to control everything and everyone around you. Grace, I'm not finished. You don't get to interrupt me. Not anymore. Not after everything you've done. Derek sat down. Grace remained standing. I hope you're happy with your choices. I hope the lies were worth it. I hope Brittany and the baby you don't want give you whatever you were looking for. Because I'm done. I'm done trying to make you love me. I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done letting you make me feel small. I never tried to make you feel small. Yes, you did. Every time you lied, every time you made me doubt myself, every time you chose her over me and then came home and acted like nothing was wrong. You made me invisible in my own life, but I'm taking it back. All of it, the house, the money, the truth, and most importantly, my daughter. She's going to grow up knowing her mother chose dignity over dysfunction, and that's more than you'll ever be able to give her. Grace sat back down. Her heart was pounding, her blood pressure probably spiking. But she felt lighter, like she'd been carrying a weight for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Judge Hartwell cleared her throat. Mr. Mitchell, I've heard enough testimony to make some preliminary rulings. Custody of the child will go to Mrs. Mitchell. You'll have supervised visitation rights pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. The marital assets will be frozen until we can conduct a full accounting, and I'm issuing a restraining order. You're not to come within 500 feet of Mrs. Mitchell or attempt any form of contact. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, that's excessive. Is it? Your client researched his pregnant wife's mortality, increased her life insurance, had a mistress telling him it would be easier if his wife was gone. I think a restraining order is prudent. Derek's face was white. I need to speak to my wife. Ex-wife, Grace corrected. And no, you don't. Grace, please. Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Hartwell said firmly. You heard the judge. Step away from the table. Derek stood. For a moment, Grace thought he might try to approach her anyway. Might cross that final line. But the police officer moved forward, put a hand on Derek's arm, and Derek deflated, like all the air had gone out of him at once. This hearing is adjourned, Judge Hartwell said. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for final rulings. In the meantime, Mr. Mitchell, I suggest you find a good criminal defense attorney, because the district attorney's office will be in touch. The gavel came down. Grace sat very still, processing, absorbing, trying to understand that it was over. This part, at least. Caroline touched her shoulder. You okay? No, Grace said honestly, but I will be. They left the conference room, past Brittany in the hallway. The other woman looked small, defeated, nothing like the smirking presence from yesterday. Grace, Brittany said. Grace stopped. Caroline tensed beside her. I'm sorry, Brittany said, for all of it, For not asking questions I should have asked. For believing lies I wanted to believe. For hurting you. Grace looked at her, really looked at her, saw past the mistress label to the person underneath. Someone who'd also been lied to, also been used, also been promised things that were never going to happen. I don't forgive you, Grace said. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I understand. He lied to both of us, and we both believed him because he's very good at lying. Brittany nodded, tears streaming down her face. What are you going to do now? I'm going to go home, eat something, sleep, and tomorrow I'm going to start building a life that doesn't include him. That sounds nice. It does, doesn't it? Grace walked away, down the courthouse steps, into the sunshine. Caroline pushed her wheelchair. Even though Grace felt like she could walk now, felt like she could run, felt like she could fly, because it was finally over. The lies were exposed, the truth was spoken. Derek's carefully constructed facade had crumbled, and Grace was free. 5 days later, Grace lay in bed at home. Doctor's orders, complete bed rest, no stress, no excitement, no anything except growing a baby and trying not to think about everything that had happened. Jenna had moved into the guest room. She worked from there during the day, checking on Grace between meetings, bringing meals, making sure Grace took her medications, being the friend Grace needed but hadn't known how to ask for. Grace's phone buzzed, a text from Caroline. Court in 1 hour. Judge wants to proceed with final DNA results and rulings. Can you make it? Grace typed back. I'll be there. Doctor cleared you? Doctor said bed rest, but I'm going anyway. Grace, I need to see this through, Caroline. All of it. An hour later, Grace was back in the conference room. Same setup as before. Judge Hartwell at the head of the table. Derek on one side with the new attorney. A criminal defense attorney, Grace noticed. Young, aggressive-looking. Brittany sat into the corner again, but she had moved her chair closer to Grace's side of the room, as if aligning herself with a new team. We're back on the record, Judge Hartwell said. Mr. Burke, I understand you have additional DNA evidence to present? Yes, Your Honor. Caroline stood. She looked nervous, which was unusual. Caroline didn't get nervous. The paternity test we presented last week confirmed that Mr. Mitchell is the biological father of Mrs. Mitchell's child. Today I have results from a second test, one that Ms. Cole requested. Brittany's head snapped up. What? Ms. Cole contacted my office 3 days ago. She wanted confirmation of paternity for her own pregnancy. She authorized me to present the results today. Judge Hartwell looked at Brittany. Is this true? Yes, Brittany said quietly. I needed to know, for sure. And Mr. Mitchell, you consented to this test? Derek's new attorney spoke. My client had no knowledge of this test. Actually, so Caroline interrupted. He did. Ms. Cole obtained a DNA sample from personal effects Mr. Mitchell left at her apartment. A toothbrush, hair from a comb, items she had legal access to as they were on her property. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, this is a violation of my client's privacy. It's legal, Caroline said, and the results are conclusive. She handed papers to Judge Hartwell. The judge read them, her eyebrows rose. These results show that Mr. Mitchell is not the biological father of Miss Cole's child. The room exploded. Derek shot to his feet. Brittany made a sound like all the air had left her body. That's impossible, Derek said. I'm the only one she was with. Caroline's expression didn't change. Apparently not. Brittany stood, walked to the table, took the papers from Judge Hartwell with shaking hands. Read them. Once, twice, 3 times. I don't understand, she said. There hasn't been anyone else. For over a year, just Derek. Ms. Cole, Caroline said gently, is there any possibility? No, there's no possibility. These results are wrong. They're not wrong. We had them tested twice. Different labs, same results. Brittany looked at Derek. You knew, didn't you? I don't know what you're talking about. You knew the baby wasn't yours. That's why you kept telling me to wait. Why you didn't want to make any plans. You knew. Oh. Brittany, did you sabotage the condom, the birth control? Did you try to get me pregnant and then, what, switch the sample somehow? That's insane. Is it? You researched your wife's mortality. You increased her life insurance. You lied to everyone about everything. Why not this too? Grace watched the scene unfold, felt like she was watching a play, something scripted and rehearsed, something that couldn't possibly be real. But it was real, all of it. Your Honor, Caroline said, and there's more. More. Judge Hartwell looked exhausted. What else could there possibly be? Ms. Cole asked me to investigate Mr. Mitchell's medical history, specifically any procedures he might have had in the last 3 years. And Mr. Mitchell had a vasectomy 18 months ago, before he began his affair with Ms. Cole. The words settled over the room like snow, cold, silent, suffocating. That's confidential medical information, Derek's attorney said. You can't. Mr. Mitchell signed a release, Carolyn said. When he filed his paternity challenge against Mrs. Mitchell, he authorized the release of all medical records relevant to the case, including records of any procedures that might affect fertility. Derek's face had gone gray. I did reverse it later, before Grace got pregnant. No, Caroline said, you didn't. There's no record of a reversal procedure, which means either Mrs. Mitchell's pregnancy is the result of a vasectomy failure, which occurs in less than 1% of cases, or she trailed off. Let the implications hang. Or what? Judge Hartwell asked. Or Mr. Mitchell wanted us to believe he had a vasectomy reversal, wanted everyone focused on his fertility, while hiding the fact that he deliberately made himself infertile to avoid having children with Ms. Cole. Grace's mind raced, trying to piece it together. Derek had gotten a secret vasectomy, then started an affair with Brittany, told her Grace was infertile, implied they'd have children together someday, all while knowing he couldn't father children anymore. Except he had, with Grace, a vasectomy failure, the 1 in 100 chance that had trapped him in the marriage he'd been trying to escape. You lied to me, Brittany said. Her voice was hollow, empty, about everything. Brittany, I can't explain. Explain what? How you got a vasectomy and then told me we'd have kids together? How you let me think I was pregnant with your baby when you knew it was impossible? How you researched whether your wife would die in childbirth so you could collect insurance money? I wouldn't. Then whose baby am I carrying? Brittany's voice broke. If it's not yours, then who? Derek didn't answer, just sat there, frozen, like if he stayed perfectly still, none of this would be real. Carolyn cleared her throat. Your Honor, based on the timeline Ms. Cole provided, she became pregnant approximately 3 months ago. That corresponds with a business trip she took with Mr. Mitchell to Chicago, a trip where they stayed in separate hotel rooms for the first time. So, Brittany asked? So Mr. Mitchell wasn't the only employee from his company on that trip. There were 5 others, including his business partner, Vincent Cole. Brittany's face went white. Vince? Your brother works for Mr. Mitchell's company? Yes, but we didn't. Ms. Cole, Carolyn said gently. Were you alone and with your brother during that trip? Yes. Derek had a dinner meeting one night. Vince and I went out for drinks. We talked about family stuff, about my relationship with Derek, She stopped. Oh my God. What? I was upset. Derek had canceled on me again. Vince said something about how Derek didn't deserve me, about how if he had someone like me, he'd never let me go. We had too many drinks. We went back to my hotel room to keep talking. And then she couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Grace felt sorry for her, despite everything, despite the affair and the lies and the pain Brittany had caused. She felt sorry for this woman who'd been used by Derek, who'd believed his promises, who'd gotten pregnant thinking she was building a future when really she was just another casualty of Derek's manipulation. Your Honor, Derek's attorney said, this is all speculation. Actually, Caroline said, it's DNA evidence. We tested the baby's DNA against Vincent Cole's, with his permission. He's the biological father. Brittany made a sound, something animal, something broken. He knew, she said. Vince knew. That's why he kept asking about the baby, why he offered to help, she turned to Derek. Did you know? Did you know it was his baby and not yours? Derek's silence was answer enough. You let me think it was yours, Brittany said. You let me plan a future with you. You let me believe we'd be a family. When you knew all along. I suspected, Derek said finally, but I wasn't sure. So you just, what? Let me keep believing? Let me keep hoping? I needed time to figure out what to do. What to do? Brittany laughed, harsh, bitter. You mean how to get rid of me? How to make me go away without looking like the bad guy? And that's exactly what you did. To me, to Grace, to anyone who got in the way of what you wanted. Judge Hartwell held up a hand. That's enough. Ms. Cole, I'm going to recommend you speak with a counselor and possibly an attorney. Mr. Mitchell, I'm revoking your bail pending the results of the criminal investigation. Your Honor, Derek's attorney objected, my client has been cooperating fully. Your client has been lying fully about paternity, about his vasectomy, about his intentions toward his wife. I have enough evidence here to believe he's a flight risk and possibly a danger to others. Your Honor, please. Bailiff, take Mr. Mitchell into custody. The officer who'd been standing by the door moved forward, put handcuffs on Derek. Read him his rights in a flat, professional tone. Grace watched Derek's face. Watched the moment he realized this was really happening, that his lies had finally caught up with him, that there was no talking his way out, no spinning a new story, no escape. Grace, he said as the officer led him toward the door. Grace, please, tell them I didn't mean for any of this to happen. She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the man she'd married, the man she'd loved, the man who had destroyed everything they'd built. But you did, she said quietly. Every choice you made, every lie you told, you meant all of it. You just didn't mean to get caught. The officer led Derek out. The door closed behind them. Grace sat very still, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. The revelations, the lace, the truth, finally exposed in all its ugly complexity. She felt the baby kick. Hard, insistent, alive. Your Honor, Caroline said, I move for immediate finalization of the divorce and custody arrangements. Granted, Mrs. Mitchell has full custody. Mr. Mitchell's parental rights are suspended pending the outcome of the criminal trial. The house and all marital assets go to Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell is responsible for child support in the amount determined by state guidelines, and I'm issuing a permanent restraining order. Mr. Mitchell is not to have any contact with Mrs. Mitchell or the child without court supervision. The gavel came down, final, absolute. It was over. Grace felt tears on her face, didn't remember starting to cry, didn't try to stop. Are you okay? Caroline asked. I don't know, Grace said honestly. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, vindication, something, but I just feel empty. That's normal. Is it? Is any of this normal? Caroline's hand was warm on Grace's shoulder. You survived. That's what matters. You and your baby survived. Brittany approached. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Grace, can I talk to you? I don't think that's a good idea, Caroline said. It's okay, Grace said. What do you want? I want to say I'm sorry, really sorry, not just for the affair, but for believing him, for not asking the questions I should have asked, for letting myself be used against you. You were a victim too. That doesn't make it okay. No, Grace agreed. It doesn't, but it makes it human. We both loved someone who didn't exist, the man Derek pretended to be, and we both paid the price for that. Brittany nodded, wiped her eyes. What are you going to do now? Go home, wait for my baby. Try to figure out who I am without him. That sounds nice. It sounds terrifying, Grace said, but I'm going to do it anyway. Brittany smiled, sad, small. Good luck. You too. They parted ways, Grace with Caroline, Brittany alone. Two women who'd loved the same man, who'd been lied to by the same man, who'd survived the same man. In the car ride home, Caroline was quiet. Finally, she spoke. He might go to prison. I know. For a long time. I know that too. How do you feel about it? Grace looked out the window, watched the city pass by. All these people living their lives, unaware of the drama that had just unfolded in that courthouse. I feel like I can breathe, she said. For the first time in years, I feel like I can finally breathe. Carolyn reached over, squeezed Grace's hand. They drove the rest of the way in silence, comfortable silence. The kind between people who've been through something together and don't need words to understand. At home, Jenna was waiting. She took one look at Grace's face and pulled her into a hug. Didn't ask questions, didn't need to. Just held on while Grace cried. Finally cried for the marriage that had never been real, for the man she'd loved who had never existed, for the future she'd imagined that would never happen, but also for the future that was coming, the one where she'd raise her daughter alone, the one where she'd build something real from the ashes of all these lies, the one where she'd finally be free. The story made the news, not national news, but local news, social media, the kind of story that is spread through professional networks and neighborhood gossip chains. Local developer arrested in insurance fraud scheme. Man accused of plotting wife's death during pregnancy. Vasectomy revelation rocks paternity case. Grace stopped reading after the first few articles. Stopped checking social media. Stopped caring what people were saying because it didn't matter. The truth was out. The lies were exposed. Derek was in jail awaiting trial, and she was home, on bed rest, growing a baby who would never know her father outside of carefully supervised visits in a sterile room. If there were visits at all, if Derek didn't go to prison for 20 years, Patricia Mitchell came to visit, Derek's mother. Grace hadn't expected that, hadn't known what to say when the doorbell rang and Jenna answered it, and Patricia stood on the porch with a casserole in an uncertain expression. "I don't know if you want to see me," Patricia said, "but I wanted to come, wanted to apologize." "For what?" Grace asked. She was on the couch, feet elevated, the position she'd been in for days, the position she'd be in for weeks more. "For not seeing what my son was, for making excuses, for thinking you were the problem when really—" Patricia set down the casserole, sat in the chair across from Grace. "When really I raised a monster." "You didn't raise a monster." "Didn't I? He lied to everyone, manipulated everyone, researched how to collect life insurance on his pregnant wife. That's not normal. That's not how I raised him." Sometimes people become things their parents never intended. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "He called me from jail, wanted me to post bail." "Did you?" "No, I told him I don't know who he is anymore. And I told him if he ever tries to contact you or that baby, he'll answer to me first." Grace felt something shift, a small crack in the wall she'd built around herself. "We are. Because you're the mother of my granddaughter, because you've been hurt enough, because someone needs to protect you since my son clearly won't. I can protect myself. I know you can, but you shouldn't have to. Not alone, Banpo." Patricia pulled an envelope from her purse. "This is information for the family attorney. There's money in trust, old family money Derek doesn't know about. I want it to go to you, for the baby, for college, for whatever you need." "Patricia, I can't." "Yes, you can. Consider it an apology. For my son, for not seeing what he was doing, for not protecting you when I should have." Grace took the envelope, held it in her hands. This gift from a woman who'd raised the man who tried to destroy her. "Thank you," Grace said. "Don't thank me. Just love that baby. Give her the life Derek should have given her. Show her what real love looks like." Patricia left. Grace sat with the envelope, with this unexpected kindness, with the reminder that Derek's choices were his own. Not his mother's, not hers. His. Dr. Crawford came for a house visit, checked Grace's blood pressure, listened to the baby's heartbeat, examined the monitor readings Jenna had been tracking. "Everything looks stable," Dr. Crawford said. "The bleeding has stopped. The placental abruption hasn't progressed. You're both doing well." "How much longer?" "On bed rest until delivery, which I'm estimating will be around week 36, maybe 37 if we're lucky." "Early." "Yes, but not dangerously so. Your daughter is a fighter." "She gets that from me." Dr. Crawford smiled. "I'd say you're right." She packed up her equipment, paused at the door. "Grace, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've seen a lot of difficult situations, a lot of complicated pregnancies, and I want you to know you're going to be okay. You and your daughter, you're both going to be okay." Grace wanted to believe her, but lying on that couch, unable to work, unable to do anything except grow a baby and think about everything that had happened, she didn't feel okay. She felt broken. 3 weeks later, Caroline called. The DA's office has officially charged Derek, insurance fraud, attempted murder. Attempted murder? The search history combined with the life insurance policy combined with Brittany's testimony about his comments. They think they can make it stick. What does that mean? If convicted, he's looking at 25 years to life. Grace was quiet, processing. Her daughter's father might spend the rest of his life in prison. Grace, you there? I'm here, it's a lot. I know, but there's more. Derek's attorney is offering a plea deal if you'll agree to certain conditions. What conditions? He pleads guilty to fraud. The attempted murder charge goes away. He gets 10 years with possibility of parole after 7. And he signs away all parental rights. He wants to give up his daughter? He wants to stay out of prison for life. Giving up parental rights is part of the deal. Grace looked down at her belly, at the visible movement as her daughter kicked and turned. This baby who'd never know her father, who'd grow up with stories instead of memories, who'd have to decide someday how she felt about the man who tried to kill her mother before she was born. What do you think I should do? Grace asked. But that's not my call. But I will say this. If he signs away his rights, he can't come back later. Can't try to be a father when it's convenient. Can't show up at her graduation or her wedding and expect a relationship. You'll have sole custody, sole decision-making power, complete control over your daughter's life. And he gets to avoid a longer sentence. Yes, Grace thought about it. About Derek sitting in a prison cell. About her daughter growing up without a father. About the choice she had to make that would affect both their lives forever. Tell them I agree, she said finally. On one condition. What condition? He has to admit what he did, in writing, not just plead guilty to fraud, but admit he researched my mortality, admit he hoped I'd die, admit he lied to Brittany, to me, to everyone. I want it documented. So someday if my daughter asks, I can show her the truth. I'll make it happen. And she did. 2 weeks later, Grace received a notarized document, Derek's confession, typed and signed, admitting to everything. The affair, the loss, the vasectomy, the life insurance, the searches about pregnancy complications, all of it, in black and white. Grace filed it away, in a folder labeled for Lily. Someday her daughter would be old enough to understand. Someday she'd have questions, and Grace would have answers, real ones, not the sanitized version, not the story that made Derek seem less monstrous than he was. The truth, in his own words. At 36 weeks, Grace went into labor. Early, but not too early. Dr. Crawford was there. Jenna was there. Patricia was there. 3 generations of women bringing a fourth into the world. No Derek, no father, no man who'd promised to love and cherish and protect. Just women, strong women, women who'd survived. Lily Grace Mitchell was born at 3:27 in the afternoon. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Healthy, perfect, with dark hair and Derek's eyes and Grace's determination written into every feature. Grace held her daughter, looked down at this tiny person who'd survived so much already, who'd fought through stress and bleeding and a placental abruption, who'd refused to let her mother's body fail. "Hi, baby," Grace whispered. "I'm your mom, and I'm going to love you so much you will never know what you missed." Lily opened her eyes, looked at Grace, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition. The beginning of a bond that would define both their lives. Jenna took photos. Patricia cried. Dr. Crawford checked vitals and wrapped Lily in a hospital blanket and placed her on Grace's chest for skin-to-skin contact. And Grace felt it. Finally, the thing she'd been waiting for. Not relief, not vindication, not closure. Peace. She was a mother now. Lily's mother. And nothing Derek had done could take that away. Nothing he'd planned or plotted or researched could change the fact that she'd survived. They'd both survived. And they were free. In the days that followed, Caroline brought papers to sign, the final divorce decree, the termination of parental rights, the settlement agreement giving Grace everything. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts, Derek's share of his business, all of it. Grace signed without hesitation. without guilt, because she'd earned it, every penny, every square foot, every single thing she'd lost when Derek betrayed her. She'd earned it by surviving. Brittany sent flowers, an arrangement with a card that read, "Congratulations on your daughter. I'm sorry for everything." B. Grace put the flowers in Lily's room. Yellow daisies, bright and cheerful, a reminder that even people who hurt each other can find grace in the end. Vincent Cole sent flowers too, with a different message. "I'm going to be a good father to my daughter. Thank you for showing me what that means." Grace learned later that Brittany and Vincent had married, quietly, without fanfare. Two people who'd been caught in Derek's web, finding their way to each other through the wreckage. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. At Lily's 2-week checkup, a reporter approached Grace in the parking lot. Microphone, camera, that hungry look that meant a story. "Mrs. Mitchell, can you comment on your ex-husband's plea deal?" Grace looked at the reporter, at the camera, at Lily sleeping in her car seat. "No comment," she said. But don't you want people to know what he did? How he tried to? I know what he did. The courts know what he did. That's enough. Now please leave us alone." She got in her car, drove away, didn't look back. Because she was done. Done with Derek, done with the story, done with being defined by what he'd done to her. She was Grace Mitchell, mother of Lily Grace Mitchell. Survivor, an architect. Woman who'd rebuilt her life from ashes. And that was enough. 4 weeks after Lily was born, Grace had her first real breakdown. It happened at 2 in the morning. Lily was crying again. The endless crying that new babies do, the crying that says hungry or wet or tired or just because I'm new to the world and everything is overwhelming. Grace had fed her, changed her, walked with her, rocked her, sung to her, done everything the books and the websites and the well-meaning advice givers said to do. But Lily kept crying, and Grace sat on the nursery floor, back against the wall, baby in her arms, and cried too. Jenna found them like that. She'd been staying in the guest room for 6 weeks now, had taken leave from her job to help, had been the rock Grace needed but hadn't asked for. "Hey," Jenna said softly. She sat down beside Grace. "What's going on?" "I can't do this," Grace said. "I can't do this alone. I thought I could. I thought I was strong enough. But I'm not. I'm so tired, Jenna. I'm so tired I can't think, can't function, can't figure out how to make my daughter stop crying." "You're exhausted. That's normal." "Is it? Or am I just failing?" "You're not failing. You're recovering from a traumatic pregnancy, from a traumatic 6 months, from a life that got blown apart. You're allowed to be tired." "But I don't get to be tired. I'm a mother now. Mothers don't get to break down at 2 in the morning because the baby won't stop crying." "Yes, they do. All the time. That's what makes them human." Grace looked at Jenna, at her best friend who'd put her life on hold to be here, who'd witnessed every ugly moment, every breakdown, every moment of weakness. "What if I'm not good enough?" Grace asked. "What if I can't give her what she needs?" "You're already giving her what she needs. Love, safety, your complete presence even when you're exhausted. That's all she needs right now." "What about later? When she's old enough to ask about her father? When she wants to know why he's not here? When she realizes her family doesn't look like other families?" "Then you'll tell her the truth, age-appropriate truth. And you'll show her that families come in all shapes, that love matters more than structure, that she's better off without someone who would have hurt you both." Grace held Lily closer. Her daughter had finally stopped crying, was sleeping now, peaceful, unaware of her mother's crisis. "I keep thinking about that life insurance policy," Grace said quietly, "about the searches, about the fact that he wanted me gone. And I wonder, would he have done it? If Brittany hadn't told the truth, if Caroline hadn't found the evidence, would he have actually tried to kill me? I don't know. That's what scares me. I married him, loved him for 12 years, thought I knew him, and I have no idea if he would have killed me or not." "Grace, what's wrong with me, Jenna? What did I do that made him want me dead? I gave him everything. I would have died for him, and he actually tried to, he wanted—" She couldn't finish. The words were too big, too terrible, Too true. Jenna put an arm around her. There's nothing wrong with you. Nothing you did caused this. Derek made choices. Derek told lies. Derek destroyed everything. That's on him, not you. Then why does it feel like my fault? Because you loved him. Because you trusted him. Because he made you believe you were the problem when really he was broken in ways you couldn't fix. They sat like that, on the nursery floor, two women and a baby, in the middle of the night, in the wreckage of everything. Eventually, Lily woke up again, hungry. Grace fed her, changed her, put her back in the crib, watched her sleep. I'm going to bed, Grace said. Thank you for being here, for not judging me for falling apart. I'll always be here, and you're allowed to fall apart as many times as you need. Grace went to her room, lay in the bed she used to share with Derek, looked at the same ceiling she'd looked at for 5 years. But everything else was different now. The next morning, Patricia came by. She'd been visiting twice a week, bringing food, holding Lily while Grace showered, being the grandmother Lily needed, the mother figure Grace had lost when her own mother died 3 years ago. You look tired, Patricia said. I am tired. When's the last time you slept more than 2 hours at a time? I don't know. A month? 2 months? Go take a nap. I'll watch Lily. Patricia, you don't have to. I want to. Please, let me help. Grace was too exhausted to argue. She went to her bedroom, lay down, and slept for 4 hours, the longest stretch she'd had since before Lily was born. When she woke, she found Patricia in the nursery, rocking Lily, singing softly, an old lullaby Grace didn't recognize. My mother used to sing that to me, Patricia said when she noticed Grace in the doorway. I sang it to Derek when he was a baby, before everything went wrong. When did things go wrong? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe they were always wrong and I didn't want to see it. Derek's father left when Derek was 5, said he couldn't handle the responsibility. Maybe Derek learned from that men can just walk away when things get hard. That's not your fault, isn't it? I raised him alone, gave him everything. Maybe I gave him too much, made him think the world owed him something. Or maybe some people are just broken, and it's not about what we did or didn't do, it's about who they chose to be. Patricia nodded, kept rocking, kept singing. Grace watched them, her daughter and her ex-mother-in-law, this unexpected relationship that had formed in the ruins of everything else. Thank you, Grace said, for being here, for choosing us over him. There was no choice. He's my son and I'll always love him. But your family too. And Lily, she's innocent in all this. She deserves a grandmother who shows up. Later, after Patricia left, Grace found herself in Derek's old office, the room she'd avoided since he moved out, the room that still smelled like him, like cologne and coffee and lies. She sat at his desk, opened drawers, found the things he'd left behind, old business cards, receipts, photos from before everything fell apart. There was a photo of their wedding day, both of them smiling, young, hopeful, unaware of what was coming. Grace looked at her younger self, at that woman who believed in forever, who thought love was enough, who had no idea that 12 years later, she'd be sitting in this office alone with a baby upstairs and her husband in prison. She wanted to go back, to warn that woman, and to tell her not to marry him, not to trust him, not to give him 12 years of her life. But she couldn't. That woman had to live it, had to learn, had to survive, just like Grace was learning, was surviving. She put the photo back in the drawer, closed it, left the office, didn't go back. That night, she wrote in a journal she'd started keeping for Lily, a record of these days. So someday her daughter would understand. Dear Lily, she wrote, today you're 4 weeks old. And today I admitted something I've been avoiding, and your father tried to hurt us. Maybe he would have actually done it. Maybe he wouldn't have. But he thought about it, planned for it. And that's something I'll carry forever. But here's what I want you to know. We survived, you and me, against odds that should have broken us. And we're building something new, something real, something that doesn't include lies or manipulation or life insurance policies. You'll have questions someday about why he's not here, about what he did, about whether it was your fault somehow. And I'll tell you the truth, it was never about you. You were innocent. You were wanted. You were loved. It was about him and his inability to be the person he pretended to be. But you're perfect. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it. Grace closed the journal, went to check on Lily, found her sleeping peacefully, unaware of all the darkness that surrounded her creation. And Grace made a promise, silent, to herself, to her daughter, to the universe. She would protect Lily from knowing the worst of it for as long as possible, would give her a childhood full of love, stability, and truth, would show her what real strength looked like. And someday, when Lily was ready, Grace would tell her everything, would show her the documents, the confessions, the truth of what her father had planned, but not yet, not while she was small and innocent and perfect. For now, Grace would carry it alone. The knowledge, the fear, the trauma. She would carry it so Lily didn't have to. Spring came slowly. Grace barely noticed at first, too busy with feedings and diapers and the exhausting routine of new motherhood. But one morning she looked out the window and saw green, new leaves on the trees, flowers pushing up through the winter-dead grass, life returning, like it always did. Lily was 3 months old now, sleeping longer stretches at night, smiling, tracking faces with her eyes, becoming a person instead of just a baby. Grace had started working again, from home, a few hours here and there while Lily napped, designing buildings that would never exist in physical form, but that paid the bills and kept her mind sharp. Jenna had moved back to her own apartment, but she visited most days, brought coffee, held Lily while Grace showered or ate or just sat in silence. "I need to do something," Grace said one morning. They were sitting on the back porch, coffee getting cold, Lily and a bouncer between them. "Like what?" "I don't know, something that feels like moving forward instead of just surviving." "You are moving forward. You're raising a baby alone. You're working. You're healing. But I'm doing it all in this house, the house I shared with Derek, the house where everything fell apart. I need to make it mine." "So make it yours." "How?" Jenna thought about it. "Paint, new furniture, rearrange the rooms, turn his office into something else." Grace looked through the window at Derek's office, still unchanged, still full of his presence even though he'd been gone for months. "I want to paint Lily's room," and Grace said. "I want to do it myself, pick the colors, do the work, make it something beautiful." "Okay, let's do it." They spent the next week planning. Grace chose yellow, bright, cheerful, the color of sunshine and hope and new beginnings. She ordered paint and supplies, moved furniture out of the room, covered the floor with drop cloths. And then she painted, carefully, methodically, transforming the plain white walls into something alive. Patricia came to help. Jenna too. The three of them working together, talking and laughing and occasionally crying, building something new from the ruins of what had been. When they finished, Grace stood back and looked at the room. Yellow walls, white trim, sunlight streaming through the windows, Lily's crib in the corner, books on the shelves, photos on the walls of Grace and Jenna and Patricia, of Lily at 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. No photos of Derek. He didn't exist in this room. This room belonged to Lily and to the women who loved her. "It's perfect," Patricia said. "It really is," Jenna agreed. Grace nodded, unable to speak, because it was perfect, and because she'd done it herself, had taken a space that held painful memories and transformed it into something beautiful. Small acts of reclamation. That's what her therapist called it. Taking back her life, one room, one decision, one moment at a time. Grace started therapy 3 months after Lily was born, at Caroline's suggestion, at Jenna's insistence, at her own recognition that she couldn't process everything alone. Her therapist was a woman named Dr. Sarah Winters, in her 40s, calm, non-judgmental, the kind of person who could hear the worst truths and not flinch. "Tell me about Derek," Dr. Winters said in their first session. "I don't want to talk about Derek." "Then tell me about Grace." That was harder, talking about herself, about who she was now that she wasn't Derek's wife, now that she wasn't defined by his lies. "I don't know who I am anymore," Grace admitted. "I was an architect. Then I was a wife trying to get pregnant. Then I was a wife discovering betrayal. Then I was a pregnant woman fighting for survival. Then I was a mother, but who am I when none of that is happening? When it's just me? That's what we're going to figure out. It took months, slow work, unpacking 12 years of marriage, 2 years of lies, 6 months of trauma, 3 months of single motherhood, learning to trust herself again, to believe her instincts, to understand that Derek's betrayal said nothing about her worth and everything about his character. "Do you still love him?" Winters asked in one session. Grace thought about it, really thought. "No, I love who I thought he was, the man I married, the man who didn't exist. But Derek, the real Derek, I don't even know him. Maybe I never did." "What do you feel when you think about him?" "Sad? For all the years I wasted, for all the trust I gave someone who didn't deserve it, but also grateful." "Grateful?" "That I found out, that I survived, that Lily will never know him as anything except a biological connection. She won't grow up watching him lie, won't learn that love looks like manipulation, won't think it's normal for men to plot their wives' deaths." That's a very healthy perspective. It doesn't feel healthy. It feels like barely holding on. Sometimes barely holding on is enough. Grace thought about that a lot, about how strength wasn't always loud and obvious. Sometimes it was just showing up, just breathing, just putting one foot in front of the other, even when you wanted to give up. She started doing small things for herself, not for Lily, not for anyone else, just for herself. She bought new sheets, expensive ones, the kind she'd always wanted but never bought because Derek said they were wasteful. She rearranged the living room, moved furniture, bought new pillows, made the space feel different, lighter. She deleted Derek's number from her phone, blocked it, threw away the last few things he'd left behind. Old shirts, a coffee mug, the electric toothbrush he'd abandoned in the bathroom. She went through their wedding album, took out her favorite photos, not the ones with Derek, the ones of her with her friends, her family, herself on that day when she'd believed in forever. She kept those, filed away the rest. Small acts, reclaiming her space, her life, herself. At 6 months, Lily started eating solid foods. Grace fed her mashed sweet potato, watched her daughter's face scrunch up, laugh as orange food covered both of them. These moments, these simple, mundane, perfect moments. This was what she'd fought for, what she'd survived for. Not revenge, not vindication, just this, being Lily's mother, building a life that was messy and imperfect and real. She talked to Lily constantly, narrated their days together, told her stories, sang songs, created a world full of words and love and presence. "Your daddy's not here," Grace said one day. Lily was 6 months old, too young to understand, but Grace needed to say it, needed to practice. "He made choices that hurt people, hurt me, but none of that is about you. You're perfect. You're loved. You're exactly who you're supposed to be." Lily gurgled, grabbed Grace's finger, held on tight. Grace started going to a mother's group, hesitantly at first, uncomfortable being around other mothers with their partners and their intact families and their ordinary problems. But then she met Claire, a woman in her early 30s, also a single mother, also surviving. "What's your story?" Claire asked over coffee one morning, babies and strollers beside them. "Complicated," Grace said. "Isn't it always?" So Grace told her, the abbreviated version: affair, betrayal, life insurance plot, survival. Claire listened without judgment. "Mine's different but similar," she said when Grace finished. "Husband was addicted to opioids, stole my identity, destroyed my credit, left when I was 7 months pregnant. I thought my life was over." "How did you get through it?" "One day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. And by realizing that losing him wasn't the worst thing, staying would have been worse." Grace thought about that, about how she'd felt when Derek was arrested, how she'd thought she'd feel relief but had instead felt emptiness. But now she felt something else. Not happiness exactly, but peace, the understanding that her life was harder now but also cleaner. No lies, no wondering, no walking on eggshells, just truth, hard and uncomfortable and real. "Does it get easier?" Grace asked. Different. Not easier, just different. You get used to being alone. You get used to being both mother and father. You get used to your new normal. I don't want to get used to this being normal. And then change it, not by going back, by going forward. Grace started thinking about forward, what that looked like, what she wanted from life beyond just surviving. She applied for a new job, a senior architect position at a firm she'd always admired. Sent her portfolio, interviewed via video call with Lily on her lap. She got the job. Started in August. Lily was 7 months old. Patricia watched her during work hours. Grace drove to an office, talked to adults about buildings and designs and deadlines. She loved it. Being Grace the architect, not Grace the victim, not Grace the betrayed wife, just Grace. Doing work she was good at, contributing, building. She started saving money, not for emergency, not for someday, but for Lily's future. College fund, travel fund, the life her daughter would build when she was old enough to choose. She also started putting money aside for herself, for her own future. For the life she'd build when Lily was grown and Grace was free to be whoever she wanted to be. At Lily's first birthday, Grace threw a party, small, intimate. Jenna and Patricia and Claire, and a few other mothers from the group. No Derek, no ghosts of what should have been, just celebration. For Lily making it to 1 year, for Grace making it to 1 year, for both of them surviving against odds that should have destroyed them. They ate cake, too much sugar for a 1-year-old, but Grace didn't care. Took photos, laughed, made memories that had nothing to do with trauma or betrayal or courtrooms. That night, after everyone left, Grace sat on Lily's floor, watched her daughter sleep. This miracle child who'd refused to give up, who'd fought through bleeding and stress in a mother's breaking body. "We did it," Grace whispered. "First year down, lifetime to go." Lily shifted in her sleep, smiled, like she understood, and Grace felt it fully for the first time. Not just survival. Not just getting through, but actual hope, actual belief that they'd be okay, more than okay. They'd be happy, not perfect, not pain-free, but happy in the messy, complicated, beautiful way that real life is happy. She thought about Derek sometimes, less frequently now. Wondered if he thought about them, about the daughter he'd never met, the life he'd thrown away. But mostly she didn't think about him at all, because he didn't matter anymore. He was a cautionary tale, a lesson learned, a chapter closed. Her story was about moving forward, about building something real from the ashes, about showing her daughter that you can survive the unsurvivable and come out stronger. Not harder, not bitter, just stronger and wiser and free. 18 months after Lily was born, Grace received an unexpected call. "Grace, it's Brittany." Grace paused. She was at work, in the middle of reviewing blueprints. Hadn't heard from Brittany since the flowers at the hospital. "Hi," Grace said carefully. "I'm sorry to bother you. I know things are complicated, but I wanted to tell you something." "Okay." "Derek called me, from prison. He's been writing letters, trying to get in contact." Grace's stomach clenched. "What does he want?" "He wants me to bring our daughter to visit him." "Your daughter?" "Clara. She's 15 months old now. Looks like her father, Vincent, not Derek." "Are you going to visit him? Derek, I mean." "No, I'm not, and I told him why. I told him what he did to both of us, how he lied and manipulated and nearly destroyed everything. And I told him I'm happy now with Vincent, with Clara, with the life we're building that has nothing to do with him." "Good for you." "But he also asked about you, about Lily. He wants to see her." Grace felt cold. He signed away his rights. "I know, but he's saying he made a mistake, that he wants a relationship with his daughter, that he deserves a second chance. Well, he researched how to kill me. He doesn't deserve anything." "I agree. I just thought you should know, in case he tries to contact you." "He can't. There's a restraining order." "That hasn't stopped him from writing letters. The prison can't control who he writes to." Grace closed her eyes, breathed, reminded herself that she was safe. Lily was safe. Derek was in prison and would be for years. "Thank you for calling," Grace said. "I appreciate the warning." "Grace, one more thing." "Yeah?" I'm sorry, really sorry, for everything. I know I said it before, but I need to say it again. I was part of what hurt you, and I'll carry that forever. We both loved someone who didn't exist. We're both trying to move forward. That's enough. After the call, Grace sat at her desk, staring at blueprints without seeing them. Processing. Derek wanted back in, wanted to be a father, wanted to undo the choices he'd made. Too late, too little, too self-serving. She called Caroline. Derek's trying to make contact, through Brittany. He wants to see Lily. He can't. He signed away his rights. Can he change his mind, challenge the termination? Technically, yes, but it would require proving significant change circumstances. Reform, consistent behavior demonstrating he's safe, and a judge willing to overturn the original ruling. What are the chances? Slim, especially given the circumstances. The attempted fraud, the research about your mortality, the lies to multiple women. No judge is going to give him access to a child when he tried to profit from the mother's death. But it's possible. Anything's possible, but highly unlikely. And even if he tried, I'd fight it, every step. Grace thanked her, hung up, sat with the knowledge that Derek wasn't finished, that even from prison, he was trying to control, to manipulate, to insert himself into their lives. She drove home, found Patricia watching Lily, her daughter playing with blocks, building towers and knocking them down, laughing every time. Derek called Brittany, Grace said. He wants to see Lily. Patricia's face went hard. No. That's what I said, but he might try it to challenge the termination of rights. Let him try. I have money, resources, connections. I'll make sure he never gets near her. Patricia, he's my son and I love him, but I won't let him hurt you again, or Lily. If he wants to challenge anything, he goes through me first. Grace felt tears in her eyes. This unexpected alliance, this woman who could have chosen her son, but instead chose justice, chose protection, chose them. Thank you, Grace said. Don't thank me. Just keep being a good mother. Keep showing Lily what real love looks like. That's the best revenge. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about Derek, about the man she'd married, about whether any of it had been real. She got up, went to the closet, pulled down the box she'd packed away. The one with wedding photos and anniversary cards and letters Derek had written during their marriage. She read them. These declarations of love, these promises of forever, these lies wrapped in poetry. You're my everything, one letter said. I can't imagine life without you. But he could, he said. He'd imagined it, planned for it, researched it. Grace took the letters to the fireplace. The one she'd had cleaned and restored, the one she'd never used because Derek said it was too much work. She lit a fire, small, controlled, safe, and she burned the letters. One by one, watching the paper curl and blacken and disappear into ash. She kept the wedding photos, not for sentiment, but for documentation, for the day when Lily asked and Grace needed to show her. This happened. This was real, and it still ended. By the time dawn broke, the fire had burned out. The letters were ash. Grace felt lighter, like she'd released something she'd been carrying without realizing. She showered, made coffee, got Lily up and fed and dressed, went to work. At lunch, she met Claire. They'd become close over the 18 months. Real friends, the kind who knew each other's ugly truths and stayed anyway. You look different, Claire said. Different how? Lighter, less haunted. Derek tried to contact Brittany. He wants to see Lily, wants to be a father. What did you say? I said no, through my attorney. In writing, absolutely not. Good. How do you feel about it? Grace thought about it, about Derek in prison, about his attempts to claw his way back into their lives, about the letter she'd burned. I feel free, like I finally let go of the last piece of him, the part that wondered if maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe he'd really loved me once. Maybe some of it had been real. But it wasn't. None of it was. And I'm okay with that now. That's huge. Is it? Yes, accepting that you were lied to. That's hard. Most people never get there. What's the alternative? Spend my life wondering, trying to find the real Derek in the lies? No, I'd rather accept it. learn from it, move on. They ate in comfortable silence, two women who'd survived impossible things, who'd built new lives from wreckage, who understood each other in ways that people with intact marriages never could. After lunch, Grace went back to work, finished the blueprints she'd been working on. A community center, space for children and families, space for growth and healing and new beginnings. She poured herself into the design, made it beautiful, made it meaningful, made it something that would outlast her, that would serve people she'd never meet, that would be part of the world long after she was gone. This was her legacy, not the marriage that failed, not the betrayal she survived, but the things she built, the life she created, the daughter she raised, the work she did. That evening, she put Lily to bed, read her 3 books, sang her 2 songs, lay beside her in the dark and listened to her breathe. "Your father wants to see you," Grace whispered, "but I'm not going to let him, not because I'm cruel, but because you deserve better. You deserve people who show up, who don't lie, who don't hurt the people they claim to love." Lily slept on, unaware, innocent. "Someday you'll ask about him," Grace continued, "and I'll tell you the truth, not to poison you against him, but because you deserve honesty, because you deserve to know why I made the choices I made." She thought about the documents in the safe, Derek's confession, the court records, the evidence of everything he'd planned and plotted. "I'll show you," Grace said, "when you're old enough, when you can understand, and then I'll let you decide how you feel. I won't make you hate him, but I won't make you love him either. That will be your choice." She kissed Lily's forehead, left the room, went to her office, the room that used to be Derek's, that she'd transformed into her workspace. She pulled up her computer, opened a new document, started writing. "To Lily," she typed, "this is the story of your beginning, not the sanitized version, not the fairy tale, the real story, the one with all the ugly truth. I'm writing this now while it's fresh, while I remember. So someday when you ask, I can give you this, and you can understand." She wrote for hours about meeting Derek, about the marriage, about the fertility struggles in the affair and the lies end, the courtroom and the bleeding and the survival. All of it, documented, preserved, truth that would wait for the day when Lily was ready. When Grace finished, it was after midnight. She saved the document, backed it up, printed a copy, and put it in the safe with the other documents. For someday, for when Lily needed to know, for when the questions came and Grace had answers. But not yet. Not while Lily was small and safe and loved. Not while the world was still simple and full of possibility. For now, Grace would hold the truth, would carry it alone, would protect her daughter from knowing the worst of it. That was her job, as a mother, as a survivor, as the woman who'd refused to let Derek's lies define her. She would hold it, and someday when Lily was ready, she would share it. But that day wasn't today. Today was for building, for working, for living, for showing her daughter what strength looked like. And strength looked like a woman who'd been knocked down and had gotten back up, who'd been lied to and had found truth, who'd been betrayed and had built something beautiful from the wreckage. That was Grace's story, not the betrayal, not the survival, but the building, the creating, the living fully in spite of everything. And that was the story she'd pass on to her daughter, not through words, but through example, through showing up every day and choosing life and love and truth. That was her legacy, and it was enough. Lily was 2 years old when Grace received the final piece of closure. It came in the mail, a thick envelope from Caroline's office. Grace opened it in her kitchen, afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, Lily at the table with crayons and paper. Inside was a letter from Derek's attorney, official, legal, final. "Mr. Mitchell has agreed to permanently relinquish all claims to visitation or custody of the minor child. He acknowledges that this decision is irrevocable. He further agrees not to attempt any contact with the child or the mother. In exchange, Mrs. Mitchell agrees not to pursue additional damages related to the circumstances surrounding the divorce." Grace read it twice, 3 times, trying to believe it was real. Derek was giving up, permanently. No more attempts to be a father, no more letters, no more manipulation. Just Done. She called Caroline. Is this real? Yes. His attorney called this morning. Derek's been in prison for 26 months. He's up for parole in a year. He wants a clean record. No pending legal issues, no connections to the past. So he's agreeing to cut all ties. Why? My guess, he met someone in prison, another inmate or maybe a pen pal. Someone who doesn't know about you or Lily or the life insurance plot. Someone he can present himself to as a victim of circumstance. And to do that, he needs to erase you both completely. Grace sat down, processing. So he's rewriting history, making us not exist, essentially. And I'm supposed to be okay with that? You're supposed to be free. That's what this gives you. Complete freedom. No looking over your shoulder. No wondering if he'll change his mind. No legal battles. Just closure. I don't feel closure. I feel erased. You're not erased. You survived. You built a life. You're raising his daughter who will never know him. That's not erasure. That's victory. Grace wasn't sure, but she signed the papers anyway, had them notarized, sent them back. And just like that, Derek Mitchell was gone from their lives, legally, officially, permanently. She told no one except Jenna and Patricia, didn't celebrate, didn't mourn, just filed the papers away with everything else. Life continued. Grace worked, Lily grew. Spring turned to summer, turned to fall. Grace started dating, cautiously, a man named Marcus she met at the community center. He was a teacher, kind, patient, upfront about everything. No secrets, no games. They took it slow. Coffee dates while Lily was at Patricia's, lunch during work breaks, careful conversations about past relationships and future hopes and whether either of them was ready for something real. I was married before, Grace said on their fifth date. It ended badly. How badly? My ex-husband tried to profit from my death. He's in prison. I'm a single mother. I have a lot of baggage. Marcus nodded, didn't flinch. I was engaged. She left 3 weeks before the wedding. Said she'd realized she didn't love me. Didn't know if she ever had. I spent 2 years in therapy processing it. So we're both damaged. We're both human. Damaged implies broken. I think we're just experienced. Grace liked that. Experienced instead of broken. Survivors instead of victims. They dated for 6 months before she introduced him to Lily. Wanted to be sure. Wanted to protect her daughter from meeting people who wouldn't stay. Lily was cautious at first. Shy. Hiding behind Grace's legs. But Marcus didn't push. Just sat on the floor and played with blocks. Asked questions about her day. Let her come to him on her own terms. After an hour, Lily brought him her favorite book, climbed into his lap, asked him to read. Grace watched them, this man reading to her daughter, this unexpected possibility of something good. She'd thought she'd never want this again. Never trust a man, never open herself up to potential betrayal. But Marcus wasn't Derek, didn't lie, didn't manipulate, was just present, honest, kind. They moved even slower after that. No talk of moving in together, no pressure about the future, just taking each day as it came, building trust brick by careful brick. At Lily's second birthday party, Marcus was there. So was Patricia, Jenna, Claire and her daughter, a whole community of people who'd shown up, who'd stayed, who'd chosen them. Grace looked around her backyard, at the decorations, the cake, the laughter, this life she'd built from ashes. What are you thinking? Jenna asked. She'd come to stand beside Grace. I'm thinking about how different this is from where I thought I'd be. Better or worse? Different, not the fairy tale I imagined, but real, messy, beautiful. Mine. That's all that matters. That evening, after everyone left and Lily was asleep and Marcus had gone home with a gentle kiss goodnight, Grace sat on her back porch. The same porch where she'd sat 28 months ago wondering if she'd survive. She'd survived. She'd done more than survive. She'd built something new. Something that belonged entirely to her. The house was hers. Every room repainted. Every piece of furniture chosen by her. Every memory made by her and Lily and the people who actually loved them. The job was hers. Work she was proud of. Projects that mattered. a career she'd built on her own merit. The life was hers. No lies, no secrets, no wondering what her partner was hiding. Just truth, sometimes uncomfortable, often messy, always real. She thought about Derek sometimes, less and less. Wondered if he ever thought about them, about the daughter he'd never meet, the life he'd thrown away. But mostly she didn't wonder, because it didn't matter. He'd made his choices, she'd made hers, and their lives had diverged completely. He was in prison, she was free. He'd chosen lies, she'd chosen truth. He'd chosen destruction, she'd chosen building. Grace pulled out her phone, opened the journal app where she'd been writing letters to Lily, added a new entry. Dear Lily, you're 2 years old today. You love strawberries and books and asking why about everything. You have your father's eyes, but my determination. You're perfect, and you're mine. Your father signed away his rights 6 months ago, permanently. You'll never know him, and I'm okay with that, because he would have taught you the wrong things, would have shown you that love looks like manipulation, that promises don't matter, that people are disposable. Instead, you'll learn from the people who stayed, from Patricia, who chose you over her son, from Jenna, who put her life on hold to help us survive, from the mothers in our group who understand that family isn't always biology, from Marcus, who's patient and kind and shows up. You'll learn that real love looks like presence, like honesty, like people who choose you every day instead of just claiming to love you with words. I thought the worst thing that could happen was losing my marriage, losing the man I thought I knew, losing the future I'd planned. But it wasn't. The worst thing would have been staying, accepting the lies, teaching you that this was normal, that this was love. Leaving was hard. Surviving was harder. But building this life, our life, has been the best thing I've ever done. You're my daughter, my miracle, my proof that good things can come from terrible situations. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that you're wanted, you're loved, you're enough, not because of who your father is or isn't, but because of who you are and who you're becoming. I love you more than I knew I could love, more than I thought possible, enough to survive anything, enough to build everything. Always and forever, Mom. Grace saved the entry, put her phone down, looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Wind chimes rang in the breeze, the ones she'd hung last spring, the ones that weren't there during the marriage, the ones that only existed because she'd chosen them. Something light, something beautiful, something that was hers alone. She heard Lily cry out in her sleep, went inside, checked on her daughter, found her tangled in blankets, gently untangled her, straightened the covers, kissed her forehead. Lily settled, sighed, went back to sleep. Grace stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep. This perfect little human who'd survived bleeding and stress and a placental abruption, who'd refused to give up, who fought from the moment she was conceived. Just like her mother, tomorrow Grace would wake up early, make breakfast, take Lily to daycare, go to work, design buildings, live her life. Ordinary things, boring things, beautiful things. The life she'd fought for, the life she'd earned. The life that was completely and totally hers. No lies, no betrayal, no man plotting her death. Just life, real life, full of mess and mistakes and moments of pure joy. Grace walked to her bedroom, the bed with the expensive sheets she'd bought for herself, the room she'd repainted, the space that was hers. She climbed into bed, pulled up the covers, closed her eyes, and smiled, because she was free, finally, completely, irrevocably free. Free from Derek, free from lies, free from the woman she'd been when she was married to him. She was Grace Mitchell now, mother of Lily Grace Mitchell, architect, survivor, woman who'd rebuilt her life from ashes. And she was happy, not perfect, not pain-free, but genuinely, messily, beautifully happy, the kind of happiness you can only feel after you've survived something that should have destroyed you. The kind of happiness that comes from knowing you did the impossible. You kept going when you wanted to give up. You chose life when death seemed easier. You built beauty from ugliness. That was her story. Not the betrayal, not the survival, but the building, the living, the proving that good things could come from terrible beginnings. Grace drifted off to sleep. Her last thought before darkness took her was simple. We made it, Lily and me. We made it. And in the morning when the sun rose and Lily called for her and life began again, Grace would be ready, ready to live, ready to love, ready to show her daughter what real strength looked like. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, persistent, present. The strength to show up every day and choose truth and build something real. That was Grace's legacy, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you so much for staying with Grace's story. I know it was heavy, I know it was intense, but that's real life, isn't it? Messy, complicated, and sometimes, against all odds, beautiful. If Grace's journey resonated with you, if you found yourself rooting for her, or if you know someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this. Real stories, human stories. Drop a comment and let me know what moment hit you hardest. Was it the courtroom revelation? The mistress's confession? Grace's moment of standing up for herself? I read every single comment and I love hearing your thoughts. And if you're not already subscribed, consider joining our community. We share stories of survival, strength, and second chances every week. Real people, real struggles, real hope. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're stronger than we think. Until next time, remember, you are not defined by what happens to you. You're defined by what you build from it. Take care of yourselves and each other.